I'm so glad you decided to buy in this neighborhood. You're going to find that you absolutely love it here. Absolutely love it. The neighborhood is so quiet, so calm. There hasn't been a major army invasion in the last decade, and even the last one before that was really only a minor skirmishing. So behind me, it's a bit of a fixer-upper, but everyone likes a good challenge around the home. Some lovely columns with some Doric capitals, and there's a statue colonnade right behind me, which I think you'll find is most endearing, and it's now all the fashion for the statues not to have any arms. It's a thing now that all the modern sculptors are doing. You can't go wrong with this. This is absolutely a gem of a stele. There are a few undead inside, which you'll need to clear out, but we do have a man who's very good. There's 5 of them, as a matter of fact. They'll go in here and clear it out for you, toot sweet, with no additional costs over and above the initial setup fee of 52%. So I think we're ready to sign on the tablet. Hello and welcome to this episode of Campaign Creator. Now, before we go any further, we've got our kingdom, we've got our government, we've got our map. One of the last things that I like to do, and this is just a final headspace thing, so it is optional. I like to do it because it is something that will crop up from time to time, and it's definitely going to be of use to you, so there we go. Enough of me telling you why you should watch this particular one. Next week, we're looking at our very first adventure, so we are definitely on track in terms of working out our setting for our campaign. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be designing the average household that one might expect in the environment in which our players are going to find themselves. Why the household, I hear you asking? It's a very good question. The fundamentals of household design, however, speak very specifically to the culture and the mentality of the individuals that we're going to find. Now, I'm not going to go into the understandings and the unpackings of the different approaches that all the different cultures around the world have. Suffice it to say that if you were to look at Japanese residents, for example, Japanese do not entertain very often at home. There are many socializing spaces that one would go to, and the homes themselves are not very large. So there is no real way to have a gathering of 20 or 30 people. My own apartment, after you add in 7 people, it's crowded. It really is. And my apartment's considered large for the area that we're in. On the other hand, if you look at an American home, these sprawling edifices often are multi-storied with large entertaining rooms and entertaining rooms at the back, massive gardens to bring everyone together and to have a big social time on. Other structures, if you look more to Europe, are cheek-by-jowl residences that might be 3 or 4 stories high, but are narrow and thin to fit in as many houses as they possibly can. You have detached and semi-detached and rows and rows and rows of houses as people try and fit themselves together. It all speaks to different approaches to accommodation and to organization of self. When we then look at, say, a fantasy setting, and arguably that's pretty much what this campaign is, it's definitely in the fantasy setting, we then need to understand what are the implications thereof. Now, if we were doing a science fiction setting, if that was our case, something that I would automatically do is design a standard starship layout. The idea is similar. By having a starship layout, we establish the look and feel for that particular race. If you think about certain shows that have different races within the show, I'm trying to think now of anything other than Star Trek. Star Trek is the easiest one to go to, but if you look at Star Trek, the interior of a Klingon warship is very different to the interior of a Cardassian warship, very different to the human Federation warships, or ships anyway. So that gives you a flavor. Now, when you look at the houses that the average person lives in, it can also give you a tremendous amount of insight as to the mentality that goes therewith. Now, I have done a series of videos on designing a city and designing the buildings that go within that. quite specifically. And it is about I'm sorry, I'm busy setting this up live. It is about understanding the space that the people are in, and if your players need a space to go to, this gives you something that will get them there quite quickly and without too much of a problem. Designing the villa, I find, is the more useful of all of the different structures that you can put together, because the players will need to go there. You could also do a tavern, and I have done videos on taverns. If you think your people are going to be very tavern based, it really is a function of where you see them being the most often. By also creating a home, you create a sense of these people as if you've been there yourself. It's a lot easier, I find anyway, to describe a place where you've been and where you have actually wandered around than somewhere that hasn't been. So if you know what the average home is like in the kingdom or in the space that you are in, it's a lot easier for you to describe that. How do you know what that space is like? Well, by creating it yourself. So whether you go and find imagery, that's photographs and things of what these structures could look like, or you map it out yourself, it's still going to make it a lot more visceral for you, so that when you are creating, when you're describing these spaces, it feels a lot realer. Now, what I have done is I am going to create this space for a standard citizen within Utherios. So this is someone who probably has a medium income, someone who is definitely going to be employed, they're going to be contributing, they are going to have a certain amount of respect, as well as I don't want to say they're going to be a trend follower, but you should be able to go, okay, dokes, these people fit quite neatly within the culture that they want to belong to. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to switch over now so I can stop being irritating, and you'll see that I have set up behind me a DungeonFog map. I like to use DungeonFog because visually that's what we're looking for. We're looking for visual stimulation. I'm just busy creating the setups now for the environment that we're in. So Utherios to me is Romanesque, it's Greek, and for some unknown reason, and it really is incorrect, I get the sandstone feeling. Yellows, ambers, oranges. Now, why on earth do I need to go into all of that? Well, again, it just enhances my arsenal in terms of describing the spaces that the PCs find themselves in. If I've got in my head the color palette of the world of this particular space, it's a lot easier to describe. You see these large sandstone buildings, their dusty tan shapes reaching up towards the heavens with the terracotta roofs that hide the residents from the baking sun. Typically, it would have been whitewashed to reflect the sun in hotter climates, to a large degree, if that's available. Roman, certainly one thinks of marble, one thinks of the white structures, the villas with its very red, very sort of terracotta tiles, as well as sort of dirty slums and things. Anyway, I've chosen to go with a brown kind of color. With that in mind, when we then think of the structures, I've got a standard little square map going on here. We look at it from the sense of, all right, generally speaking, and this is true for predominantly the Roman style, where you have a central courtyard around which the rest of the house is based. That was a very, very common theme in Roman architecture. If you look at, let's say, I'm trying to think now of a different approach to it, that idea of the central space doesn't really exist in the English environment. English environment was a longer, more decentralized approach in terms of residences. In terms of the American approach, it's sprawling. You've got large amounts of space, so you can have these big homesteads that just ramble off in different directions without too much limitation. Obviously, in cities, it's a different environment. You also look at cost factor and the like. So let's get on with it. Let's build a basic space here. I think we're going to have the street facing side. I'm going to just pop this in like this, and we're just going to do very simply 10, 20, let's make it a 30 foot by whatever it is at the moment. So there is our space. It's our front door of a simple house, not a complicated house. Already these kind of visuals are giving me some clues as to how this whole household is going to work. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a wall here. I'm going to come bouncing back, and I'm going to create another wall here. Rooms sometimes are multi-purpose. So once you've built the structure, you can then say, okay, well, the entrance hall is arguably going to be here, and then they're going to have 2 auxiliary rooms. They don't need this massive entrance hall. They really don't, if they're not going to utilize it. So let's go with that. We're going to put in a kitchen facility down here because, well, we need to feed our guests, and that's a thing. And I'm going to do that. I've got the quad idea in mind, so we're going to stick with that quad. Remember to just control our layers here. Oops, wrong thing. We're going to go to rooms, take this room and drag it down there so it sits nicely, or better, depending on your perspective. Okay, so we're going to do that, and we're going to come down here. Let's do it on this side first. I wanted this to stick out purposefully, and you're going to see why in a little bit. So we're going to do this. We come in 2. Okay, and then we're going to come down to here and up to there. So we've got these 2 large wings, kitchen, supply, etc. Then maybe we're going to have residential type of stuff there. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is the last room that I can make, and I'm going to square it off like that. Okay, that gives us our basic shape. Now, automatically, I'm going, okay, this little quad here is going to be cool. It's going to be pretty nice to hang out in. I'm going to fill it up now with a room because I haven't done that yet, but I needed to change these values. So this is going to go to 0, and this is going to go to 0. So that I can create my inner room, which is not actually a room, there. And I'm going to go to my layers, grab this unnamed room all the way down to the bottom. Right. So now I have my spaces. Putting in doors is always fun. And now that we've got new doors to play with, I really enjoy that. So I'm going to put in a double door entrance, because remember, it is about being dramatic in this case. If you've got the central entertaining area, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of the psyche of the people. Now that we've understood that these people have this space where there's a show of wealth in this courtyard, that means that they are showy people on average. The residents build big villas. They have these central courtyards to show off how rich they are. In terms of drought, you fill it up with water to show, oh, I've got so much money, I'll just fill it up with water. In terms of usage of space, if you're a little bit not so conservative, if you're not more of the idea of this is a space to sleep in, it's not a space to entertain in. I don't need massive numbers of rooms. I don't need to have good crowd flow. I can have it a little bit tighter. You can certainly go that route too. So in this case, they want to show off. They like showing off. I'm going to put this door in the middle of the building, not in the middle of the room. And I know some of you might scream at that. There's a reason for it. So there's our first doorway, and they would have directly leading through. So guests would arrive. They're going to hand off their cloaks. They're going to hand off their armor or their weaponry, however that might be, whatever that might be. And then they're going to move through into the main courtyard so they can see just how ostentatious their hosts are. The kitchen entrance is going to need double doors so that our kitchen staff can move in and move out and just have an absolute blast of a time. Bedroom areas don't need double doors because we're not showing off anywhere. These double doors I would certainly throw in here because, and again, this is just projecting or trying to project anyway, the psyche of the people that live here. Imagine now you've set it up that your guests are arriving. They're walking in through that front door. I don't have a sweeping staircase that allows me to gracefully walk down the stairs as my guests arrive. That's not the kind of structure that these buildings might be. They might be 2 stories high, but the second story would be reserved specifically for accommodation and private study. It wouldn't be necessarily for guests. You don't want people looking out of your building. You want people looking into your building. I have an internal quad, not an external quad. So I want people to look in. I don't want them to go upstairs. That's just too complicated and the like. It does mean, though, that I need to be able to make a dramatic entrance. So when my guests are walking in through the double doors at the top, up here, they're coming in through here, I am throwing open these doors and stepping out across the quad from them saying, "Oh, welcome to my home. It's so big, we have to shout at one another. Oh, look at all my money." So that is the kind of thinking that goes on in my head anyway. I don't know if it's right or wrong. So what this means here is that this room then becomes a dressing room or a grand entrance room type of thing, as opposed to here where we don't want guests wandering around our bedrooms to see all of our private odds and ends. That's not something that we want. The kitchens down here, definitely not going to have guests. So the kitchen staff are going to have maybe, remember it's about entertaining, so we need a slightly bigger kitchen so we can entertain all of our guests. So I'm going to allocate them this space here. So there's your kitchen. Kitchens almost universally require some kind of storage. They need somewhere to store stuff. And it needs to be cold, and it needs to be lockable, and it needs to be somewhere that can be kept away from people. And unfortunately, where you've got large amounts of entertainment and where you've got this culture of slavery, you're also going to need to have somewhere for the staff to sleep. So we're going to need to organize that down here because we've established that this is the working space. Back up to here and to this irritating situation. It's not irritating, it's just off-center, which I know for some people might be a bit of an issue. So I'm going to fix... No, I'm not going to fix it. Yes, I am. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it for you. I will do that. There we go. Now everyone is happy. Symmetry has been achieved. These 2 rooms, what could they be used for? Well, considering that I'm going to add this in over here, it's not going to be a double door, I can promise you that much. I'm going to use an open door. It will be 1 by open door here, so there's access to the alleyway. Kitchens needs to have food coming in. You don't want the porters bringing in the food whilst you're entertaining, so they have to come in through the back. No doubt about that. You don't want your slaves, when they are leaving to go shopping or to do whatever it is that they're going to go and do, you don't want them to be freely wandering around the kitchens at night. So we're going to add in their exit is going to be down here. And they're going to have a horrid little door there, and they're going to have a horrid little door there to move between the kitchens. Then there is obviously going to be a locked door. This is what I use, by the way, in DungeonFog. I use open doors to indicate doors that are not locked, and then closed doors for doors that are locked that require a key. You can actually obviously also say it requires a key. It turns it red, and then only GM can see that. So it's just a function. Nonetheless, okay. So we are designing this space, and can you see how? I hope anyway you could see how it becomes valuable. From the perspective of saying, okie dokes, the mentality of the individuals that live here, it's all about showiness. So the PCs might very well get hired by members of this space to go and do dramatic things. This might be a case where there is this powerful member of the ruling class who wants the PCs to go and find the perfect statue for the central pool. You must find the statue. I want something that no one has ever seen before. I must make myself clear. No one has ever seen this before. It's important. So that's something that you can draw inspiration from. That you can literally draw inspiration from it. The mentality of a people who like to show off, but who like to show off privately. It's a bizarre kind of idea. Anyway, it is what it is. This outer side, I said we were going to do something special with it, and we are indeed going to do something special with it. We are going to use some dirt, and That's okay. This needs to change to wood because it would be made out of wood. I am building a stable yard. We need stabling. Do we need stabling? No. Again, drawing on what we have learned about our sort of Roman Greek space, one of the things that we know is that the idea of porters and litters where people would lie in these things is quite strong, I think. And so this space here would be where your carriers would wait, because I don't know. I can't imagine the idea of, oh, well, we've arrived at the party. Well, you're going to have to go back and come back later. Yeah, that's just irritating and inconvenient to have to wait for these people. So I would have it as a space where it could be for horses if you want horses in your campaign. We did also speak earlier on, and again, this is why I like to do this now. We did speak earlier on that flying creatures were going to be quite prominent as a means of transportation and moving around the world. So quite possibly, this could also be the stabling of some of those creatures, that you would arrive on Pegasus and then fly off again, if they're going to be that common. Otherwise, this is quite possibly also the wagon house. So let's make it a double door affair. I don't think they would necessarily be locked. They certainly don't need to be. Who's going to break in? Good luck. These other two rooms, again, service rooms, we could put in guards. They could sleep in here. It's not a problem. If it's going to be guards, all that we're going to do is just go back to that wall texture, which I was using. It could be guards. I think guards makes the most sense, to my mind, anyway. A guard room. If you have, it doesn't really matter about that because we're not going to be using it for that. You can split these rooms again into smaller spaces. I've used the wrong texture. I will have to go look for the texture. Anyway, by building this home, we start to go, so that's, nope, still not the right one. That is the nature, that's the mindset of the people. I feel now, and I don't know if you agree or maybe you disagree, maybe you think that this is not a step that you need to take. I feel now as if I am far more aware of the type of people who would live in this space than I was before. This is I forgot to change the main thing. This is the people who live here. They like to show off. They like people who are ostentatious. They like people who show off. So if the players fit that mentality, the players are going to find it a lot easier to operate in this space. It also means that you don't want to show up or show off your host as being a poor host. So there's going to be a lot of protocol that's going to stick there and be required to be observed safely. I think it makes for a very interesting space. Why didn't I, or why do I not, and this is just me sort of anticipating your thoughts wrongly, probably. Why bother going to this level? Surely just by looking at a few pictures, by understanding the culture, by watching a TV show or 6, I would have the same experience. Perhaps I would. I don't know. By building maps, for me personally, this takes no I don't want to say skill, but it really doesn't in terms of creating something that I think makes a lot of sense. Visually, I can now see it. I can now get a strong feeling for those that are here. I might very well say, okay, well, they're going to have splashed out on these floors because, again, they want to show off. So they might have tiles. Those tiles are not very impressive. It really, to me, helps me understand how the people work, how their minds work, what their mentality is like, as well as giving me, again, more story options. Just the more ideas I can add in, the more I can, get insight. The easier it is for me to do stuff on the fly, to come up with an adventure where the slaves are trying to take over this dinner that the PCs have been invited to. I don't think any map, there we go, that'll work. I don't think any map is wasted if you have an open mind. If you say, okay, cool, this is, ooh, crikey, this is disgustingly terrible. Bad taste, I say. It's perfect. We love it. No map, I think, will ever go to waste if you look at it and you say, okay, cool. This we can certainly add to our repertoire now. We know players could break in through here. They could try and steal something from this particular homeowner. We've got the home designed. We can populate it with furniture. We've got spaces that will take into account what one should normally have. The more you put in, I find it a very relaxing exercise, personally. I do. Call me crazy. I find it very relaxing to just sit here and just, let's add in this. What would we have here? We'd probably have, it wouldn't be big windows, so it's probably small little windows like this in the stable yard. Again, it's an opportunity for players to look in, see the senator and his wife, or the senator and someone else having relations or murdering one another in the stable yard. That is my mentality when I'm designing these things. Is how does it inspire? What does it inspire? And how can I store it away so that when my players go rushing off, I can simply and easily adjust to the whole process and say, okay, cool, you come across this home, here's the map, off we go. You can have as many maps as you like. Just if you spend an hour or so making a map, I mean, we've spent 27 minutes. I would have done this a lot faster if I wasn't explaining all of my actions. 27 minutes, we've got a map that arguably you could use. I'd like to develop it further, and I will develop it further. But that's my thoughts. I hope that you have made some maps and that you find benefit in maps. Some people say, oh, I don't like maps. You don't have to use them for combat grids. You don't have to say, oh, this is exactly 40 foot by 40. It's more than just a map. Until next week, when we look at our first adventure, I'm super excited about that, our first actual adventure. Until next week, then, I wish you and yours the very happiest of campaign creation. All right, okay, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that this is too much work. It requires too much skill for you to be able to work this. But I think that you'll find that you are really going to like this whole thing. You really are going to like it. And once you subscribe to the idea of renovation, this triptych, this thing, it builds itself. You don't have to do a thing about it. And, well, sometimes I find that if I have a little bell, I can ring that, and then it gets the goblins to do what it wants. And they're cheap labour. I have a cousin who has a horde of goblins who will redo this place in weeks, and then it will be fabulous, and then you can move in. So what do you say? Will you sign?